week by week basis. Sometimes I like to look at big picture and I want a place to put it. So to have this moment where we can kind of just take a break once a week, kind of talk about the big picture stuff. Today, I think I'm going to leave people somewhat unsatisfied because I'm mid process of trying to figure out what is happening in our industry. But maybe now going back to your question, like, the conversations I've had over the last few days, because we're not qualifying, we're doing some interviews with people joining the Catalyst event starting this weekend at Digital Design Days. And I think everyone knows about it. Sorry. But these are major brands. We're talking about brands like Gucci, Ducati, Ferrari,
Jesus.
Prada, MasterCard, HP. There's 13 to 15 of these brands going to be in the room with another 12 to 13, 14 agencies. And the idea is to listen and discover the needs that are happening right now in our industry. So Esther, who's hosting it with me, her and I have been doing some interviews just to get a sense of what the room will be like, how to navigate through the challenges. And we've had some
What are you hearing
honest
so far?
conversations. Yeah, very honest conversations. The big picture pivots that are taking place in leadership and technology are probably the biggest hits. And this is somewhat complemented with last night's dinner in Los Angeles, where we had network executives from Amazon, MGM Studios, Hulu, Netflix. Pash was with us from Apple TV Plus. So I got some kind of big hits there, and then studios and agencies, including some old friends of mine. Just again, processing, kind of asking questions. So here's what we're hearing. Things got really complicated for a lot of people. And it's interesting when the rubber hits the road, what that complication really sounds like. But one of the conversations I had yesterday at lunch was with she's a brand strategist and entertainment network strategist. So she lives in the commercial space, and she talked to me about just this. I'll give you one example. Is the example of a multi-generational brand commercial campaign. So traditionally, good old fashioned days, 4 years ago, you'd make content for a demographic. So when Friends was created, it was made for a demographic, 18 to 25-year-olds, 18 to 30-year-olds, whatever it is, 35-year-olds. And because they made that content, people would buy commercial airtime to advertise to it. So if I was selling Mountain Dew, I would buy Friends ad, right? If I was selling insurance policies, I would buy time on CNN. If I was so that the content determined where I was going to place my ads because the demographics were kind of like driving that look and feel. So today it's no different. We have content. It's just that there's a diaspora of content. It's all over the place in social media, traditional broadcasts, OTT platforms, and so on. It's just spread out everywhere. But also the demographics are broken down to much smaller bite-sized pieces. 17 to 19-year-old women, 22 to 27-year-old men. So we had this gigantic breakdown, this huge breakdown of all these small micro demographics that's possible because of digital marketing. Yet the decision makers are still traditional. We still have one 45-year-old person making a decision for a campaign that has to hit micro generational hits for Mountain Dew, everything from 17-year-olds to 65-year-olds, and on all platforms. So the complexity of making that decision leads that leader to not making a decision. It's too hard. They have analysis paralysis. So they don't make the decision two different ways. One, they don't make the decision, and that's the ghosting and some of this weird stuff and clients that are falling off, and like it's just like the decision makers are gone. They're afraid to, or they don't know how to, or it's taking them longer to make that decision. Or the other one, they don't make the decision by doing what they've always done. So many of you might be coming in against an incumbent, a studio or agency to a brand. That brand is saying, we want to do something different. So you're introduced as the differentiator, this new thinker. And then when the decision's made, they go, we're going with the incumbent. Sorry. And why are they doing that? Because they're like, we understand that you can take on this new challenge, but to be honest, you're not hitting all of the spectrum. You can't actually solve all my problem. So if you're not going to solve the whole thing, it's just going to make my life more complicated. Forget it. I'll just do what I did last year. So the decision tree and decision making, the complexity that they have, and then the decision makers are trying to look for an answer, and we can't really meet that need. So this is what's being repeated. And in a weird way, Matt, luxury brands, automotive brands, like I said, networks, technology companies. I'm trying to think of who else we've talked to. I mean, blockchain personalities, and content creators, filmmakers. All these. Everyone's trying to has the same problem because they don't know where to put. The distribution doesn't match their effort. They don't know where to put it. And then take economics and that kind of stuff that removes the ability to. What we were doing was basically experimenting with Wall Street money over the last few years, trying to figure out how to make it work. And that dried up. So then all that dried up. So that's the complexity of that we've been hearing. That's a long explanation, but that's like my big takeaway right now is like, oh, wow, this is our structures and decision makers are set up for the right kind of decision making that we need that they're coming across.
And did you get any little tidbits? Obviously, there's no magic solution to this, but what were they saying that they wanted from providers, or did you get to that sort of area?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So some of what they're depending on us for. So like, let's talk about a brand or a network that's going to outsource it. So first thing you have to recognize is that they're not going to outsource this stuff. If they're going to create something or invent something, they can't just send that off to third parties that do a one-off project. So if the partnership doesn't exist between you and this brand, you're not going to, it's too high of an investment. It's too long of a need. So what they're looking for, if you're a third party, is total partnership. You have to understand, you have to buy in, you have to be ready to explore, you have to be willing to listen, try something different, and they're doing it in-house so that they can retain the knowledge and keep the momentum going as they figure this thing out. So that's one thing they're looking for, is this partnership. And the partnership has this retained knowledge piece of it, as we said, but also has this idea of like a trust along the decision tree. So I almost feel like this magic moment we've all been waiting for, where the client would eventually just get out of our way and we can just do whatever creative we wanted to, right? That's what we've been waiting for. That moment has literally come, and none of us are prepared. So the first thing we say is, I'm totally ready to do the freedom. What do you want? Just tell me exactly what you want. So our EPs are asking for details down to the budget item so we can budget properly. And we're pre-negotiating things because we know there's small margins. So we're already like requiring the client to be very restricted because their budgets make us. I'm not saying we're doing something improper, but all they're hearing is like, oh, the minute I open the gate to you, you want to restrict it right back to something that fits your comfort zone. And we're like, well, of course, we have to run a business. We can't just like give it all away. And so now we have a clash there. But this idea of partnership has to be explored. We have to understand it. We have to almost like, in a way, like know what our investment in that partnership looks like and reset it up and set up in certain ways. And we have to be willing to analyze that and come alongside and create different protocols so that we can kind of think differently and act differently.
And this is definitely I guess you have to come into this doing more homework, like understanding what their needs are, but also having opinions.
Yeah, there's wait, it's a good word. Is the word opinion? Because I almost feel like there's too many opinions. I almost feel like the question is, hey, how do we discover a method of decision making? Instead of just like what I would do, hey, what I would do is, and give you my opinion. I want to say, gosh, the problem you're having with the NFL is very complicated. Our best advertising are these players, and the players can't act, but they have more followers than the teams. And then if they do something dumb, it throws off all of your branding. But we've pivoted to influencer marketing. Wow, that's a really complicated thing. How do we control something that we reacted to, but also build something out of it? So what would how would that, how would that work with your team, or how would that work with that network, or with that organization that is dealing with these complexities of like high-end celebrities or high-end sports athletes or influencer marketing. So I almost feel like there's got to be a method that says, I know how to control it. I know how to, I know how to position it in such a way, or I know how to build that thing out, or at least I have a theory you want to try, and then have that network or whoever saying, yeah, I'll give you the money. Let's give it a shot and see if we can do it.
Yeah, it's a different conversation, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like some of us are not, we don't want to do this. It's not what we signed up to do, and that's okay. Right. But I at least want you to know where the decisions are coming, so that when you're in the room, you recognize the probability of getting that work.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm further down because I choose to be that way, or my skill level is geared that way, or my staff, the way I staffed is that way. Now I understand the decision tree coming at me, and I could at least prepare as it's floating down. I might even be able to ask more discerning questions to determine where they are in their decision tree, to get more clarity of will this project award in the time that I traditionally expected it, or is it this new world order of decision making of like, oh, what feels like ghosting and what eventually rebounds to give us the work. I understand the process, so I can anticipate that. At least if you're at least have some insight, you can kind of do that, we'll call it prediction of work. But some of us might want to lean into it, or find this challenging very exciting, and go like, I don't know, I have this really great filmmaker I work with, and I might as well sit down with them and have a couple of drinks when I'm pitching that title sequence, and say, hey, can you just tell me what it's like to work with a studio nowadays? How does the Paramount deal change who you're pitching to? And what's the impact of that on your future deals, or the people that you know? And just get some like honest feedback from somebody, and start building your own kind of encyclopedia of issues and solutions. Um, I feel like that partnership has leverage. So if, let's say, the scenario I just said, you partner with that director on some solutions, I feel that that combination of you and whoever your client is leverages you into the next conversation. So you're almost building your own like personal, campaign or network to evolve yourself deeper and deeper into some of these issues. So you're not going to just be chosen because they like your website. They're going to be listening to you and whoever you are championed with to get in the room. And that's a new challenge and opportunity as well, to know that your EP or your salesperson has to go beyond the pick me, it's the right budget, right time scenario, and kind of think through like, oh, I have to listen through this conversation to determine where this will go if we work together on it.
Yeah.
This is a much slower conversation than we usually have, because it's not like, this isn't heavy hits today. This is just more of like real life analysis. I feel like I'm reporting from the field right now, because these are fresh conversations and real people. And there's a lot of, in the LA area, there's a lot of people laid off. There's a lot they're asking me. I mean, they're having coffee with me because they'll tell me what the whole problem is, and at the end they'll say, and then I need a job. Do you have any work for me? Or do you know anybody needs my work? And these are very amazing folks that just, the pivot has pushed them out, or put them in a position where they have to kind of come back in, and they know the problems. They're not visible. They just don't know the solutions. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
So lots of chatting.
What's the what?
You've got lots, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, because
chatting.
you
Yeah.
posted a great article of community, but a lot of things you're saying are true, but it takes a bit to actually unpack those things to find out what matters for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So I chose this title of like remove complexity, right? So some of what happens, let's just talk about analysis paralysis for a second, right?
Yeah.
So when you're up against somebody that can't make a decision, you have to kind of ask the question, what's slowing down their decision making, right? And sometimes it's lack of information. So, you can just bring it. Today's day and age, it's rarely that. It's almost too much information. So there's got to be some filters or some understanding, at least some empathy for what it's like to have all this and get through it. And analysis paralysis comes with that. There's too much to analyze. and then it's often like it's still a deadline driven. So I have to analyze more in a shorter amount of time, and in a lot of cases with fewer people. So that's a very obvious pattern that doesn't work. And by the way, this is not the pressure. This is not the pressure we're getting as the vendor. This is what our clients are going through. Can you imagine
Yeah.
imagine taking that and trying to hand it off to us? Hey, I have this really complicated thing I don't understand, and now I'm going to pass it on to you. They don't do it. So until they can simplify it, they're not going to say anything to you. So one of the things I feel like we could lean into is like, can we make it less complicated? So that when we're asking the questions, we're asking questions that give an understanding of like, oh, I know what you're up against.
Mm.
And I know empathy is good, but I don't just mean empathy. I almost mean like really kind of understand what the work product might need to be in a multi-generational campaign. Let's say that was what you're up against. So yeah, you can go into a meeting, recognize that this is a luxury brand, realize that social media influencers are pushing that luxury brand into, the influencer kind of looking campaigns for 18 to 25-year-old women that are spending way too much money on a handbag so they could take one photograph with it and look cool. But they're doing it because they have disposable money. But also that youth that they're projecting is what the older woman wants to buy because she's buying youth. So I have a second campaign, and I might just say, hey, can I just deal with the second campaign for you? So let me just make it simple. I understand that you have a lot of variety. How about I just not ask for all of it, ask for something that is manageable and has a real impact. And I'm selling the youth that the social media influencers are allowing us to take part of. So you can
Yeah.
come in with that knowledge and homework, or have an understanding that might be there, and just ask, are you dealing with this? Is this a reality for you? And how does it impact what's going on? I also think that the technology conversation, we'll call it, instead of the other word that everyone wants to use it, but there's a technology evolution taking place that allows for some variety, and to invest into or understand how technology could possibly simplify the process or simplify the method, is something you can introduce to the conversation as well. And
Yeah.
get
Because
variety
they
and
want
impact.
they want to talk about it, and they don't understand it either. They probably understand it less than you do, and they just hear that there's this magic thing that can make things, and it could change everything, but they don't really know how that's going to work.
Yeah, what they know is that I can get out at a lot more because I can plug some variables in, and I can make all the possible variables. So I can create my micro campaigns using an AI intelligence to tell me what the difference. It's still globally on brand, but I can get the nuance out of it. Um,
Mm.
so to stay on brand and to know what brand is difficult across a multi-generation. I'm using multi-generational because it's easiest one to understand, but there are other kind
Yep.
of things like this. But to understand the complexity and lean into that, some of us are going to be innovators in that space. And so this is a chance to, like, if you want to innovate, understand what the problem is, lean into that, and then bring that into the equation so that they don't have to think of it. And that's a strong partnership you can bring in, is that we've advanced the technology, and not in the, I wrote this, it's not what the entertainment people are telling me is like AI can't create the content. It will be rejected.
Mm.
Right. So that's not it. But the idea of like using it for its intended purpose of scale and remove complexity, totally find some efficiency. So you can't go all the way to the point of like, and then an AI made this entire film or this entire commercial. It'll make all the commercials, like all of a sudden, like the authentication mechanism in our brain goes, this is garbage. I don't want to watch this. And you can hurt your brand. So um, I think some of that fear that people are feeling, I don't think that's what the issue is. But I think the understanding of the efficiency within that technology would be something very good to understand as the industry evolves.
Yeah, I'm finding agencies are way more interested in process than they ever were before. Like we've been having meetings with just talking about process and talking about this is where you fit in, this is where the decisions are made, and this is where the decisions aren't made. And they actually, even creatives are interested in it. And they've been very fruitful conversations. But and when I started, I remember animation used to be this dark art where it's like, yeah, it costs $3,000 a second, and that's all you need to know. And but it's
Yeah,
not, you can't do that anymore.
no more. Yeah, like it's that. that bubble's kind of burst, hasn't it? Well, I almost feel
Yeah.
like the the reason why we know this is the right moment to do the rekindle accelerator you're talking about is
Mm.
this idea of like um the thought process that you can simply just put some magic words out there. We are the company that does X, and have the client decide what that means, or try to get those that as clear as possible. I don't think we're going to get the answer out of that anymore. And what
No.
you're talking about with the secret sauce is like, no, you're going to bring something into the equation, and to know that's a part of your process, and your need has to go beyond just making a promise and not keeping it, or putting some words out there to win that first meeting, but then not how to follow through. You're basically saying, hey, there's a root level and a root desire to solve the problem from the inside out.
Yeah. And I mean, like, as everyone keeps saying, sales is a conversation, but you need to actually learn how to have that conversation, and you need to practice it, and you need to make sure it's a good conversation. It's a bit like when you're trying to ask someone out for the first time, and everyone's like, just be yourself, and everyone will go out with you. And that's like was always the worst advice. I hated that. I was like, I don't know who I am. But yeah, I think you do need to be yourself, and you need to figure out what the best version of that self is, and how do you and get comfortable saying it.
Yeah. Yeah. I That's what I think. We're coming back at this right now in this conversation, very theoretical, but we have to get very practical of like at least things we can do today, tomorrow. Many of us are not having the best year ever, but we do have some clients, and those clients, you should start talking to them. You should start
Mm.
understanding what that conversation should sound like, and start introducing yourself as that player, that partner. Um, I was interesting to who showed up to dinner last night. It was interesting who decided to show up, because it was a lot more variety than I expected initially, but like then it made sense of like, oh wait, everyone's looking for the same goods no matter where they're coming from. I wasn't
Mm.
expecting these what's felt like random pockets, but they have a universal desire. What's the desire? They wanted to hear what all of you are doing for a living. That's why the guy of the VP of a major studio showed up, because he's like, hey, what the heck are you guys doing out there? Because I want to understand that and bring that information to my team, so that we can know where to invest, or what technology and purpose people are putting behind their work, so we can start judging that the right players,
Mm.
the right person. So I think your idea of just diving into that, to the relational based sales, is this is the total perfect timing for that conversation.
Oh, good. I was hoping
Yeah.
it was. That's good to hear.
We're not fools. We got to know we're doing a little bit. Um, yeah. So I know this is midstream, but I'd say at least my three main takeaways are, um, you're going to have to nurture these relationships. Like that's the number one thing. We're going to have to understand who the people are and what they're about. Doug Field shows up here every week. I see Doug all the time, and Doug's experience is amazing. What he did at MSG, what the play is, but also knows what the pivot's like. Doug, you might admit, like me, we don't know what all the answers are, but we know it's different, and no one's doing it the same way. So that curiosity to kind of lean into that is pretty awesome. And that's like the person I talked to yesterday, the network strategist and brand strategist, same thing she was saying. She's like, listen, I can tell you 100%, I've been in all these rooms for years. Everyone in that room, super intelligent. They know what they're doing. They have a great job. They know exactly how to make it happen. And yet they're also just guessing right now, because it's not as clear as it used to be. So that's pretty exciting. So I'd like that. Like, I think like lean into partnerships. Hey, Doug, I'll get you in a second. I'm going to just summarize this real quick, and then I'll come back to your thought. But so I like that. I think the technology angle is something that we all know we're sitting on top of. There's no reason to hate it. It's going to be part of the process. It feels very much like everyone's on the same page, that it's not going to make our content for us. Although I have another theory of when it will. It's not going to do it immediately, but there's going to do something in the
Mm.
future. So it's not going to make it for us because it's inauthentic. It's not the human narrative that we're used to. So AI can't write a script. I swear Netflix has tried, and that's why those Netflix movies are horrible, man. It's just, like it's so lame out there. even the latest movie on Apple TV Plus, I was like, I wasn't that impressed by the script, even though the actors are world class actors. I think we can.
Which one are you talking about?
I don't, you know,
Not the Clooney Brad Pitt one.
I didn't say that. You said that.
I like I
I don't know. I didn't find it like I don't know. I felt like it felt a little contrived. Like I felt like yeah.
It
You
was
know,
slow. It was two old guys. They could have been playing golf.
that's what I'm thinking. They should yeah, exactly. Um but then the last one is like I think that we really if you want to start um getting more yeses than nos and you want to start preventing the slowdown that's coming to you, you're going to have to do something to streamline the process. And this might be working directly with your executive producer. This isn't you and the tech team and the animation team streamlining it. I mean, talking to your EP and salespeople about the words they're using and conversations that they're having, and stop
Mm.
making all the hurdles. Stop trying to pre-qualify every aspect of it and lock it in. And I'll say this: I 100% get why we're doing it. We're being hit on the smallest margins, and we were trying to make a protective barrier between us and our clients to say, I got to make this really, really clear so that when you cross this line, I can charge you overages. And I am 100% still saying do that. I'm not saying that part, but how you introduce that, what the need is, and how you introduce how you're going to get past those barriers should not feel like a police officer guarding a
Mm.
barrier and to say, don't get past this or I'm going to fine you. It needs to sound more collaborative, like, hey, here's a range that we're going to work with it, and here's the check-in process to see we're going on pace, and here's where our investment starts and stops. Still talking money, still adding clarity to the scope, but the language you're going to use has to sound inclusive, open, evolving,
Transparent. Yeah.
transparent, and so on. Yeah, yeah. And I don't want you to commoditize yourself. I don't want you to do that kind of transparency. I'm talking about authentic relationship kind of
Mm.
transparency.
3 good takeaways.
What do you think, Tom? I,
I
I
like
did
it.
write this all down because I was processing late last night. So I put an article in on the circle on RevCommunity just so you can kind of
Oh,
read my initial thoughts.
question from Ron. Tim, are you finding that there's a lack of decision making because of a lack of expertise amongst the decision makers?
No,
Thank you, Ron.
yeah, that's my instinct too, Ron. Like I was thinking, do they need more information? That's my initial instinct. Today, as of today, I wouldn't say that's what the issue is. I would say there's just not enough capacity to make all those decisions. So they have the experience and expertise, but who they are as a person, and their team is not stacked to make micro decisions. Teams are created to make one macro decisions and make a gigantic campaign and do it like we've always key art here and Super Bowl commercial there. Like that's what they're looking for. And today, like they need a totally different capacity. So they would even know the answer, but the inefficiency of trying to translate that answer to the next level, and the micro level, and the social media influencer and their agent, and then the production team, and like it's just so many layers to get down to this nuance that the capacity is gone. So I think the
Mm.
knowledge is there, the capacity, time, effort, energy, know-how is what's missing. And that's why I think if you invest in the know-how, then your efficiency, they can call you and you can read each other's mind. Boom, you're more likely to get a green light. Oh, and when you say that, I know what you mean. Great, go do it. Thanks, bye. And then you go off and do it for them. Stay on brand, stay on mark. Don't need 7 rounds of revisions or approvals. Please just get 2 rounds of approvals. Can we just get past? Cool. And then if you find those efficiencies that way, that's my
Mm.
current takeaway, Ron. I'll know more next week, but that's what my instinct says.
Yeah, yeah. I can't wait to hear what you say. Doug Field asks, what part does fear and vulnerability play in decision making?
Yeah. I mean, all of it, right, Doug? I mean, a lot of people are asking themselves the question of why am I here? Am I capable of doing it? And should I keep on going? Um, the bigger tech companies, I know that that's where they feel very confident, but then also like there's so much riding on every single presentation that they do, every keynote that they make. If somebody says something wrong, the pressure floats down to that first level of decision making of why did your team screw this up? And now you're in the hot seat and you're like, we invented this AI last week. And then I had to put a presentation together and you have to, because you're racing it to the front end. you're being very, very careful. So there's like this moment of paralysis that says, am I really in the position to launch this meeting in 3 hours? And do I like it? Is it clear? Or am I risking something? And I think that risk factor, especially on the tech side, seems to be going very, very fast, and people are really struggling to keep up with it. The
Mm.
good news is they're throwing a lot of money at people willing to solve that problem. So they go into a presentation making four possible, because they didn't know which one it was going to be, and they only had 2 days to turn it around or 3 days to turn around. So they went like, okay, we're going to make three versions of it. We'll decide at the end which one's going to be. So they'll throw money at it. So there is a little bit of that transaction taking place. Yeah, good question.
Just, just to be clear, pardon my voice. What I meant by fear and vulnerability was that as someone who did procurement for the GM and CEO of the company, once we got into working with I hate to use the word vendor, but a creative firm, to just creative decisions, people were like, am I going too far or not far enough in terms of, and what will my boss's boss at MSG, there was somewhat of a Byzantine hierarchy, and it was ruled by fear, and you can get hit over the head for the smallest little thing. And I think in the creative world, people, at least my experience has been, people are afraid to step out, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I'll say at least two conversations I had where the people who are in that pipeline are saying, we need a total restructuring of this. I can't be asked to be in the middle between a long-term decision maker and the creative team that's doing it, and be guessing what the long-term person, and just going through. So we're on version number 72, and then be able to tell that vendor, by the way, we only get 2 rounds of, I'm only paying you for 2 rounds of revisions, no matter if it's 16. And in key art, I've been hearing a lot about key art. Key art's definitely been crushed. Major studios and the key art industry is like, we just can't handle the revisions like we used to, because there's too many pieces of key art needed, and they can't do it for the 15 or 17 pieces for all the spectrum they're doing. They can't handle 3 weeks worth of revisions for all 17. So they try to streamline it by cutting back the budget, but still the decision makers up the stream haven't caught on. And so, yeah, there are a lot of people in the middle. Yeah.
Oof. Any other questions? Has anyone provoked?
Yeah. Maybe this is a cliffhanger week, because
Ooh,
next week I might be coming to you live from Milan. I'll grab some of these folks and drag them into this conversation. I'll see what I can do, but we'll have 3 days of pretty good conversation about this. Not to mention, I'll be losing my voice every night trying to keep up with the conversations too. But yeah, we'll have I'm expecting some really good insight. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you just speak with your hands. That's right, Ron.
Exactly right.
Well, I'll do a quick plug. I'm launching. I've got a workshop launching at the end of the month called Rekindle, where we're going to be focusing on relational sales, focusing on conversation, focusing on understanding and building up personas of your clients. So that's exciting. There's a page up on the website, and we'll talk about it more in the next few weeks.
Yes, it is right there on the website. If you go to the top of our website, it says announcing Rekindle. And Matt, yeah, well, I think we will. We're going to talk about that. You're going to do a webinar, kind of explain the theory and process of what you've gone through. You taught this at Camp MoGraph in Australia. Got really good feedback in your 1 hour session. So then you've broken it out to even expand it more into the 6 sessions that we have here. So each of these ideas is just understanding your client, what it means to be like, and kind of get rid of the BS of like, hey, just one right word and you get all the right answers. You're actually diving in deep of like how sales really works and how it attaches to the client.
Yeah, it's the first sales and marketing course based around hot sauce. That's my my promise to the world. We're gonna own it, and it'll all make more sense. You can read through that. Everyone got their own hot sauce bottle. PJ's hot sauce bottle is there. I think he did a continuous and emotional delight was his secret sauce that we found, and they could all go home and put their secret sauce on their eggs.
Yeah, that's the idea. Take it home and eat it, right? This is your secret.
Yeah, you gotta eat your own business.
I don't know how you're going to ship hot sauce all over the world, Matt, but we're going to have to figure out
That's
how
my challenge.
to. Yeah.
Post is back. Everyone said Post was going to die, but Post is back. And how good is
Yeah,
it getting
right.
something in the mail? It's the
I got
best.
mine. It was like a big bubble of it. So it was perfect.
Yeah, I've got a lot of bubble wrap.
Uh,
Um,
well, thank you all for being part of this conversation. I hope that helped. I did start that article. I'd love to get more questions, more feedback. Throw it right there in the comments of in the comments of in the community. Kind of keep the conversation going. People didn't hear this conversation too. So any other insights that you have that people can read as they jump on community, really, really great.
well, good luck in Milan, Tim.
Thanks,
I
Mister.
wish I could say a proper farewell in Italian, but I didn't practice that.
I think it's just.
Arrivederci.
I think it's ciao.
Ciao. Ciao,
Yeah,
Tim. Ciao.
yeah. Val, right? Val, it's I know it. Come on, like all Europeans. When we just say ciao, when we everything's ciao. Yeah, yeah. Val's like whatever.
My secret for Europe is trying to find the 80s phrase for awesome in in that language. When I was at Annecy, I just learned like giga cool. It says giga cool. And I said that and French would like smile and nod and I got a really good French response. In Germany, you can say Uber auf den Tittengeil, and they would go, "Oh my God, I haven't heard that since the 80s." So if you can find, I'll look it up for you. What is 80s Italian phrase for awesome?
Perfect. Yeah,
You just
yeah.
say that, and that really works. It cuts through a lot of
Resonate through it.
nonsense.
That'd be great. I'll be known as that guy. That'd be great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for being part of this conversation. It's great to see you, and we'll see you next week after a few long days. But Matt, thanks for
See.
putting this together. I appreciate you.
Ah, ciao.
Ciao, everyone. We'll see you next week.